Hi, I'm Peter Kearney from City Food Growers. I'm in our winter garden and I'm going to do a short garden tour today to show you what I've got growing in the garden here. So this garden space here is about 300 square metres and it's one of the vegetable gardens that we have. We've had this space being productive for about 10 years now. There are some quite big trees around this space, but it's nice for summer, our hot summer. In winter makes it a little bit tricky to grow fruiting plants, so most of the plants that I'll show you as we walk around are leaf and root plants and herbs. But we do have some peas. So we've got a whole row of narrow beds going down here, and you can see these first ones here all have these ones are called rabbis, which are all coming up beautifully, and these are cabbages here. We like to grow a lot of cabbages here because we always make sauerkraut, which is a wonderful way of preserving vegetables and giving them new life. We've got really nice soil here that is quite sandy loam soil that holds together beautifully, and so we've been working this soil for ages, and part of that soil process is making compost, and these are our compost bays here. This is some compost that's brewing here, which is still in a fairly manure-y state. It doesn't smell of manure, but it's got a bit of a way to go, probably 3 months before it's ready to use. And we have remnants of plants here, and some bins that are all part of our composting process, which is really essential for the success of the garden. So we're just going to move to another section of the garden now, and I'll talk about some of the other plants that are in the garden here. This section of the garden here, we have mostly root crops. There are potatoes that are here, which I've started harvesting some potatoes from these plants already. There's onions here, spring onions there, and over here we have some leeks which are growing really well and have been mounded with compost to help them to get a bit fatter. We're starting to harvest those already. Behind the leeks are kale. There's a bit of weed around here. It's mostly chickweed, which is an edible weed that we like to eat in salad. And there is some asparagus at the back there. So that area of the garden tends to get quite nice moisture, and the asparagus like that. We do have clumps of herbs dotted around this garden, and this one here is Vietnamese mint. Not so happy in this cold time of the year. Behind it are chives, and there's parsley around here, and perennial spinach, Brazilian spinach. So it's good to have some perennial plants dotted around your garden. This section here, which is more root crops, is mostly garlic. We've got about 130 garlic plants in here, and some more spring onions, some dandelion, which is another plant that we've got quite a few dandelion plants in this garden because the dandelion is really good for your soil, and you can also eat the leaves. And you can see in this bed here there's a lot of nasturtiums. We eat the nasturtium leaves and flowers, and you can even make pesto out of nasturtium leaves, which is pretty spicy. And the flowers here are beautiful. They attract the bees, and also they're a good companion for a lot of plants, especially brassicas. The smell of the nasturtiums seems to detract some of the pests that are friendly to brassicas. Down along this section here we have more leafy plants, which are Asian greens. some of these are starting to come to flower now. So we've been harvesting from these for quite a long time now. And I like to leave these plants to go to flower in the garden to attract the bees. We've got a native beehive which I'll show you in a moment, but they also attract the European bees as well. At some stage we'll get a European beehive too. Okay, so we'll move along to another section of the garden now. So this section here, we have some broccolis which are growing really well, and you can see there's a layer of nasturtiums behind the broccolis which is there for as a weed barrier, but also it's beautiful and it helps the health of the plants. We've also got more potatoes here which are due to be harvested in about a month, and this whole section was all root crops, and behind them are more Asian greens that we've been harvesting from for at least 3 months now. So lots of really beautiful production from that section. Some of them are starting to get a bit tired now, but there's a lot more coming up. This bed here, we have more potatoes, and you can see that we have a climbing frame in the middle of the potato bed which has peas in it. And peas, and in fact any of the legume plants, are quite good companions for potatoes. So that climbing frame, getting up into the sun, because I said earlier that this garden doesn't get a huge amount of sun in winter, so any fruiting crops really need to be up in the air to get as much sun as possible. So these peas will go okay, but they won't produce as much fruit as in our other gardens which are in total sun. So again, this section of the bed here, we're experimenting with clover as a see this clover, white clover, it's got a white ring around it. We're experimenting with having the white clover as our path, because it is a legume plant. It's really good for the soil. So what I'm planning to do is to spread this clover through all our paths in the gardens, and we've got narrow beds which are mostly quite narrow, about this wide, and we use those in our rotation pattern in the garden. Some of the beds are a little wider, like this one here, but really it's got potatoes, peas and potatoes. Okay, so let's move to another section of the garden. So this section here, you can see up there is our native beehive, and the bees are not coming in and out of the hive yet because it hasn't reached 18 degrees. That's usually when they come out. Even though it's sunny, it's actually quite a cool morning today. This bed here has carrots and radishes that we've been harvesting the radishes, but the carrots are still coming on. And here's a mixture of lettuces that we've been harvesting from those for quite a while now. Interesting fennel plant here which has been growing for 12 months now. It didn't go to flower last year, all our other fennels did, but fennel is a really beautiful crop to grow in the garden. It tastes great and it's very productive. Okay, these two beds here are leafy beds, and they're a mixture of cabbages. There's the red and green cabbages, there's mustard greens, mizuma, different Asian greens. They're mostly brassica plants in here. So some wombok there which is getting a bit eaten, and these mustard greens are going to flower. There are quite a few lettuces dotted in here as well, underneath the high growth of the other plants. This bed in the middle here has mostly leaf plants in it, though just down there there's some cauliflowers which are going okay, and some really big Asian green bunches. You see in the middle of the garden there we have a water fountain, a bath for the birds, and I think it's really important that you put a bird bath in your garden to attract the birds to be living in and around your garden, because they'll help eat the pests eat the caterpillars and things in the garden, and they also add this beautiful energy to your space. We've actually got some cow horns buried under that area there to make a biodynamic preparation, which we pull up in September. This part of the garden here has mostly herbs. It's more a perennial area, and we've done it that way because it's quite a new bed and the soil is still fairly raw. It needs a bit of work, and most herbs don't need particularly great soil. So there are some Asian greens in there, but we wouldn't grow any plants in there that needed nice soil like that exists in the rest of the garden. And here's a patch of sweet potatoes, and they're stuck away from the rest of the garden because they could very easily take over. But also this section of the garden doesn't get a lot of sun in winter, and they don't need much sun at all. They can grow in mostly shade, so it's a really good weed mat, and it also produces food. So yeah, that's this garden bed we have here, which has got a lot of rows. There's probably 15 garden beds in this patch here, and they're all in a rotation pattern that allows me to work with a cycle of green manure, leaf, flower, fruit and root. So that pattern I tend to use in all these beds, and it really helps with the fertility. All the planting, the planting stuff I use here is also in our website, and so that's probably about it for the garden tour now. So thanks for having a look around our garden, and I'll probably do another tour in late spring, say around November, and you'll see a whole lot of different plants in here then. And thank you. Peter Kearney from cityfoodgrowers.com.au.